Okay, welcome everybody to the Research and Development panel. And inadvertently, you got a little view of the behind the scenes management here. I'm just going to call on each of the panelists to introduce themselves and tell you a little bit about themselves and their interests in the R&D aspects of Maple, and then we can open the floor for questions. Okay, first, Laurent, please.
Thanks, Rob. So, name is Laurent Benada. You've probably seen before. President and CEO at Maplesoft. I've been with Maplesoft for a little over 20 years now. I started as a developer in our mathematical development group. Prior to that, I was finishing a PhD in symbolic computing with Gaston Gonnet and Mike Monaghan, some of the people that are involved in Maple very early on. And today, still, I'm President CEO, but I still do have my hands in the technology here and there. So, looking forward to the discussion.
Excellent. Next, Paulina, could you please introduce yourself?
Hello, I'm a senior architect with the math group at Maplesoft. I've also been at Maplesoft just over 20 years. Over the years, I've worked a lot on the plotting facilities and the typesetting facilities, but this past year, I've been coordinating the content creation for our new Maple Learn product. So that's been a very exciting venture for me.
Excellent. Karishma.
Well, good morning, everyone. My name is Karishma Punwani. I'm the Director of Product Management, focusing on our academic products at Maplesoft. So that's Maple, looking at Maple Learn, Maple Calculator, and the cloud. And a little bit of background on me. I actually started off my career as a developer at Maplesoft way back when, and quickly realized that development wasn't my thing. I think I'm happiest really at the intersection between development, design, and client success. And so my job is really to collect the feedback from all of our users and make sure that we're creating products that add value. So yeah, I'm also looking forward to this discussion.
Thank you, Karishma. Paul, you're up next.
Sure. My name is Paul DeMarco. I'm Director of Development for Maple. I started, it's approaching 25 years now ago, and I started as a math group developer and then moved into the core kernel code. So looking after data structures and memory management and things like that. The last year or so has been looking at the back end of some of the new products, the mobile app and the web app, Maple Learn, and looking at exposing some of the steps algorithms and some of the connectivity to Maple.
Thank you, Paul. Okay, Erik, you are up next.
Hi, everybody. My name is Erik Postma. I'm currently the manager of the Mathematical Software Group. And so that means part-time managing and part-time writing code. And I guess one of the things that I'd like to hear about in this discussion is what are the new mathematical questions that we should attempt to answer? What questions that you have cannot be answered by Maple currently and should be answered in the future?
Aha, excellent. Thank you, Erik. Okay, Jürgen next, please.
My name is Jorgen Gerhard. I'm Senior Director of Research at Maplesoft. I have my fingers in many pies and projects. I don't want to spend the time to list them all. But on the development side, my interests and responsibilities are mostly in series and limit computations and in computations with algebraic numbers and algebraic functions. And I started out a little bit less than 10 years ago, I think, about the same time as Paulina. I was hired into the math group by Laurent, but I have since moved on. I'm not actively involved in development anymore, but I am in charge of collaborations that we have with external developers, for example, who contribute code to us, and I've also been supervising COPE students and intern students.
Okay, and finally, Andrew, please, you get to clean up here.
All right, thank you, Rob. I'm Andrew Smith. Welcome, everyone. It's really exciting to see such a large group here this morning or today. I am Andrew Smith. I'm the VP of Product Development, and I think this happened last year at this panel as well, but today is actually my 18th anniversary with Maplesoft. So I started at Maplesoft on November 3rd, 2003 as a member of the user interface development team. And user experience definitely remains near and dear to my heart, but I really enjoy the fact that my new role, or my current role rather, gives me kind of a wide exposure to everything that's going on at Maplesoft. And the past couple of years have been particularly exciting with the development of MapleLearn and the calculator and MapleFlow. There's been lots of interesting and exciting things that have happened lately. And that's it for me.
Thank you very much. Okay, so we'll throw the questions. You have a Q&A button or bubble down at the bottom of your chat, and you can ask questions of any of the panelists. If you have a particular question for anyone, please indicate which one. If you just want an answer from anybody, please do so. The chat, well, we seem to be using the chat for just chat, but maybe questions can show up there too as well. So, pardon me. So we can begin. People have been thinking about Erik's question to you. What do you think is most important? I can start people off with a question for any one of. I could start an argument. I could ask a question that would start an argument. That would be fun. Geraldo Rivera throwing chairs at one another across the. No, we're not going to do that. The first question that I want to know is, what are the new things that people want to talk about coming out of research and development that will be upcoming here? Maybe we can. Okay, we have three questions. 4. So I think we're doing great. I will begin with Saha's question. Can we use MapleLearn for first-year undergraduate mathematics courses to solve all kinds of mathematical questions? So this is not directed to any one person, but the MapleLearn people. Okay, Karishma, let her microphone go live. Go for it.
Okay, so yeah, great question, and the answer is absolutely. So MapleLearn was designed for students starting from high school all the way up to first, second year university. Everything that is taught at that level, MapleLearn should be able to help you with. And I think, as Laurent mentioned in his talk as well, MapleLearn is still young. So if there is something that's missing, I'd encourage people to let us know, because that is definitely the goal behind MapleLearn and why we actually created, or at least one of the reasons why we created it.
Okay, thank you, Karishma.
Can I add something to Karishma's answer, Rob?
Please.
So I've been working on coordinating content that's been put in our MapleLearn's examples gallery, and we feel like we've covered some of first year undergraduate mathematics. There's material on integration, differentiations, basic stats, and so on. But if you look through that gallery and you find some real gaps that you'd like filled, we'd love to know about it. So one way is to just find us in the networking session or send one of us a direct message. But that's something I would actually like to know from the attendees.
Excellent. So I see some other questions. I'm actually going to collapse 2 of them into one, which is obviously Maple has, let's see, we're year 40, or what's the official year for Maple now? How many years has Maple been Maple? It's kind of a hard question to answer, but it's a process of continual improvement. And as I wrote in my book, no non-trivial piece of software is bug-free. So there's always going to be bugs. What is the preferred route for reporting bugs or reason for improvement? So how would you recommend people do that? Anybody take that one? Andrew can take that one.
I can take that one, sure. So the best channel is always our customer support, our customer success team, and they'll make sure that the reports get kind of relayed to Karishma in particular as the product manager, and she'll take care of prioritizing and collecting the reports. That's kind of the official channel, but of course, I'm sure a lot of the folks here have other connections into the organization as well. And really anybody you can reach out to would be happy to hear your reports.
Thank you, Andrew. That would be great. We have a question about the programming guide. Well, it actually says, given that the programming guide is quite good, is there any movement for creating an advanced programming manual or best practices for developing Maple programs? What do you folks do to train new developers to starting coding in the Maple environment? So, resources for training programmers. Maybe Erik will take that one.
Sure. So I think basically, so I very frequently have students who come do an internship with us for a couple months, and of course, often they start with zero Maple programming knowledge. So we start many people programming, and honestly, the first thing I tell them is install Maple and look at the advanced programming manual and start working through it, because it is quite a useful thing. We also have things like the workshop that Paulina Chin and Matt Calder gave earlier, sort of as the prelude to this conference. Yeah, I mean, that's another avenue of learning. So I think those are the types of things that I would recommend.
Rob, can I add something about the programming workshop? So I gave this 3-hour intro to programming workshop years ago at a conference, and then I've repeated it since, and found that actually giving that workshop to people in our company, to new employees, to co-op students has worked well too. And so we did this advanced programming workshop. I have to say it's not really advanced. There's so much advanced in Maple, but it was kind of a next steps in programming workshop that Matt and I did, and we got really good feedback from the participants about what they'd like to see in the future. But I would, a lot of people said they would like to see more workshops on programming, maybe some more focused to specific topics, more hands-on workshops. So feedback about that would be valuable as well.
Thank you. Does anybody else want to add anything about teaching programming with Maple?
Well, since you asked, Rob, I'll jump in, and just to let people know that the marketing team does have these workshops, and they're done on Eventbrite. They do it periodically. I know, Paulina, you've been roped into doing it, and so if there is more demand for things like that, I know we'd be happy to do it. So that was just my plug for some of the other workshops that we run.
Thank you, Karishma. It's an ongoing battle, actually, because the computing is always on shifting sands, and the computing environment is always changing. So you always have to update your skills, and so resources to help update the skills are real good. So the chat is blowing up. We are just 1,000 questions have come up in there, and I'd really like to see questions about fractals, questions about resources for the adult learner. Let's try that one. Shortage of qualified resources for the adult learner. Maybe this means curation of materials, enabling discussion groups for teacher training courses. Is there any thought of providing materials for that? Karishma?
I feel like I'm taking up, I should be quiet, but this question really speaks to some of the stuff that I've done recently. So just this past week, I gave a 3-hour workshop to a bunch of teachers in training who are going to become math high school teachers. And we focused specifically on Maple Learn. But I think that those kind of discussions, you know, to be able to show people Maple Learn, but to get feedback on also what they're learning, right? And have those discussions are truly valuable. And so while we are working on creating training material, I think personally, if there are different schools, if there's different groups that we should be connecting with, you know, I, as well as some of my colleagues, are more than happy to do that. I think it's just finding those forums to have those discussions. And a lot of it, selfishly, I use feedback to help me guide, you know, and my colleagues guide the development of the product. So, you know, for my answer is yes, you know, we want to do that. I think it's just finding out the right channels, and we're more happy for it to be ongoing workshops, to be training. I think, you know, we can do whatever people want. So that's my short answer, and it's something that we're committed to.
Thank you, Karishma. That's an excellent answer. Okay, let's move from teaching and from software to applications. We have a question from a mechanical engineer by background, and who's asking about where do the apps that are existing in Maple already, and says, I miss apps from the field of strength theory, bending beam or similar. How are such apps planned, and what could I do to get such an app implemented? Does anybody want to show the app collection? I don't know if you can share screens or not, but nobody's jumping in to answer that one. Jürgen, do you have any comments about mechanical engineering applications?
I can, but it's not really my my area of expertise, although string theory does not sound like mechanical engineering.
Beams, strength of beams. And it's very much mechanical engineering, yeah.
Oh, okay. So maybe I can speak to where do all the apps come from. So most of them were authored by students, which we hired on a part-time basis. But we don't have any subject experts really on all the possibly interesting areas of science where apps could be produced. So if you're interested in producing some of those apps yourself with your help, then please contact us. We're definitely open to discussions there.
Thank you for that question. It is an interesting area. Let's come back a little bit to software. A lot of software packages exist for solving partial differential equations numerically, because most partial differential equations in industry and applications really can't be solved symbolically, or at least they don't seem to be able to be solved symbolically. So numerical solutions seem to be important. Is this on the, I mean, we have, Maple has some facilities for solving PDEs numerically. Is more on the horizon? What is the prospect for PDEs in Maple? I'll tag Erik with this one then, maybe.
Yeah, so this is something that perennially, it always comes up every year when we make a planning for what are we going to work on this year, what's going to go into the next release. We often talk about doing that. One of the things that we sometimes think makes it maybe less of a good fit for Maple is that it would require a couple other steps first to do this well in practice. So to get to a point where you can really do good application work, you need to do a first step where you can work with all sorts of interesting geometries that you can describe in all sorts of ways. And if you don't have that, then it's necessarily going to be limited in applications. So when we think about this question, we often think, well, we should first do the geometry stuff and then implement the better PDE, numeric PDE solving on top of that. And that makes it a large project. And that means that often we decide, well, let's postpone it until next year and then until next year. But it's definitely on our agenda and on our list. We'll come to it at some point.
Thank you, Erik. Does anybody want to add anything to that? And I have a question for Laurent. What is the roadmap for MapleFlow?
Yeah, that's a good one. I mean, the background there is that MapleFlow was designed from the start as a tool that works with the engineering workflow. Right? So Maple has a very rich history, a long history. It's used in many different areas, and but Flow was designed with the engineer in mind. And so in Flow you'll find things like dependencies. If you have a dependency between two calculations, a parameter and a calculation, and you change the parameter, then the calculation will update right away as soon as you change the parameter. As opposed to Maple, where you have to explicitly say, okay, I want to reevaluate this. In Flow, you'll be able to rearrange your content on the page freely. So you're free to put your calculations here and then maybe a side calculations over there, very much like a Maple. So the product, what you produce, the document you produce, looks more like an engineering notebook. So that is the roadmap for MapleFlow, to continue to make sure that we take the power of Maple, the Maple engine, and we present it in Flow with a UI that makes sense to an engineer and that integrates well in the engineering workflow.
Okay, thank you, Laurent.
Rob, can I just add something there? I saw, Laurent, you'd answered some of the questions in Q&A. It seems like there's a lot of engineers listening to this talk. And so there are resources, Maple applications that have been created. They are on our website. I'll put that in the chat as well for people to take a look. And as well in MapleFlow, our product manager who's responsible for MapleFlow, as Laurent said, it's predominantly intended for engineers. There's also some great applications in that product. So a plug for MapleFlow, take a look. There's a lot of stuff that I think people would find interesting.
Thank you, Karishma. Good point. Good point. Okay, I'm going to switch tracks again. We have a request. Can we request Maple to create a platform where kids can learn programming easily? Now, there's an interesting new market. Kindergarten, Maple in kindergarten. Well, I'm exaggerating, but kids learning to program. Any thoughts? Andrew, you've been quiet for a little while. What would you say about creating an environment?
I thought you were going to say I was a kid, Rob.
Well, there is that too.
Yeah, that is an interesting question. I mean, the Maple language is a pretty easy, or a pretty approachable language for learning programming. It may be still a little much for very young learners, but I think there's maybe some opportunities to take Maple Learn in that direction. It's not really things that we spent a lot of time talking about, quite honestly, but it is an interesting idea, and Learn, as we've said, is kind of targeted at that younger audience. So that might be the platform to start to think about things like that.
Thank you. So there is a logo. If you remember the turtle geometry, the Maple logo, not Maple logo, the programming language logo, which moved a turtle around, and kids found that very attractive. And there is a Maple version of that written by Eugenio Roanes Lopez. And I've recently seen a talk about it, but I don't remember exactly where. But I don't know, this could be something.
And Rob, can I add something to
Please.
that? So we have some co-op students at Maplesoft who have been playing around with the new features of Maple Learn and Maple Learn scripting. And some of them have created some sort of interactive things to teach ideas in computer science, sorting and so on, and in a pretty intuitive way using images that you can move around, so on. So I don't think these are published yet. Some of them are still in the works. Yeah, if you catch me sometime at one of the sessions later on, we can take a look at these.
So I'll add to, because I've also been quiet. Kids is a relative term. So some people may say high school kids are kids, and I think that's fair. My first experience with programming, like you said, was with Logo, and that was just using commands to draw things on the screen. And I have seen some of our high school users give Maple to a classroom and ask them to create animated plots. And there's some really cool ones on the web, a magic hat that moves around in a path, and then a rabbit comes out or something like that. And these were all created by high school kids that were just given access to free reign, go create something fun in Maple. And that is exposure to programming.
Yes, excellent.
If I can add, I believe in the art exposition that we have with this conference, there is one entry that was submitted by, if I understood correctly, a high school student, which does involve animations, and I would highly recommend that you look at it.
Thank you. Very good point. Everybody should go to the art gallery, but that's a good one to look at. I actually have two follow-up questions for Paul. One is in the chat, somebody asked about a real draw now, just so that you could animate things inside a program instead of waiting for the program to finish. Is that possible in Maple now, or?
It actually is possible. So the way to do it is to insert a plot component, and then you can use the document tools package to send plots to that component. And as your algorithm is computing, you can send new plots and have it refresh in real time as you're computing. So we have some examples that, for example, generate fractals, and as they're refining and getting deeper, the plot actually refreshes, and you can see it evolve over time.
Another good example is Explore. So everything in Explore and everything in the new plot builder, if you've seen that, is built on this infrastructure.
Aha, I didn't know that. I'm gonna go and play after this. So the next question, also for Paul, is that people were reminded by MapleFlow existing that there was something called TensorFlow. Is there Maple on GPUs, and what's happening?
Yeah, so we had some experience with coding. We have a package in Maple that will turn some linear algebra operations towards your GPU. So matrix multiply and Gaussian elimination, certain algorithms, and the early days of that were very promising. We had a plan to develop more of these and have the ability to automatically send these calculations to GPU. More recently, we found that CPUs have gotten much better, and memory management and locality of memory on the CPU makes some of these operations even better just staying in main memory rather than sending this memory, copying it to the GPU, and then copying it back to get the result. So the short answer is, for most calculations, you don't need to do that, and especially change calculations where you need to come onto the GPU and then off, back and forth. So we've mostly put that on hold. but if there are interesting applications, we can think about it again.
Excellent.
Following up on that, just a note that there's actually a copy of TensorFlow in Maple now. So with a Maple API, so you can build TensorFlow graphs and run them from within Maple.
Thank you, Laurent. Okay, here's a social media type question, and there's a specific question in the social media, but then we can talk about social media and Maple and maybe a little bit more generally. So this circulated in social media a few months ago. Could you please draw the graph of f of x equals 10 to the x minus the square root of 100 to the x in Maple calculator? The graph should be straight line, but there are irregularities after x equals 15. And then the question is, why can't Maple simplify the expression before trying to draw its graph? Now, this is actually a hard question to answer in detail, but it's also an example of a question that is asked regularly on social media. So there are lots of different aspects to this one. Who wants to go first? Okay.
So, okay, let's do this. This is Learn. The plot engine of Learn is the same as the plot engine for calculator. So we can try this. So here's the expression. It's a straight line, right? And it's a straight line because when we simplify this, we can have Maple simplify it, right? It's of course 0. But if we zoom in enough, then we start getting artifacts. And this for, I think this is a teaching moment, right? Because if you have an expression that is here constant, right? But when you calculate it with a numeric process, and there's going to be round-off errors, there's going to be error introduced, and eventually you will get garbage, right? So no matter how you calculate or display this plot numerically, at some point, right, if you zoom in enough, you'll get weird results. Now the question was, why doesn't Maple simplify this first and then plot it? Right? But we don't do that, right? And one reason is this is really a pathological example, right? In practice, this doesn't really happen. Simplifying symbolically can be an expensive operation. Do you really want to pay that price every time just in case something weird is in there? And you can always do this manually, right? And find out, okay, it's 0. The other reason is what if you have something like x over x? Right? You want to simplify this to 1? Well, what happens at 0? And then if you simplify too much, you might miss artifacts in the plot. Right? So it's a difficult kind of problem. I agree with Rob, right? But I think we're handling this as about as well as it should be handled.
I wanted to add to that, that's not related to the question, but the opposite can also happen, that you plot an expression which seems to be 0 everywhere in the plot, but in actuality it's not. So that latches on to what Laurent said about the teaching moment, that you should teach the students that the plot is a very good indication of what could be the case, but it's not a certainty and it's not a proof.
Okay, now what about the larger or the alternative social media aspects? When people ask these questions on social media, is it responsibility of somebody to step in and say and do this explanation? This teaching moment kind of demands a teacher. How is that best going to happen?
I think we should get Laurent on TikTok, and he can explain some of these teaching moments.
We'll get it on there.
I like it. I like it. It works very, very well.
But actually, just speaking a little bit more seriously about social media, I think that's one of the things that we have been trying to do is work with a lot of influencers who are on social media, who are engaging with, kids, and trying to show them, to why math matters and why it's cool and how it's everywhere. And so for us, it's been a focus over the past, 2 years to continue to do this, but also, to ask. I have myself tried to create some of these videos. I have a few followers, nothing near the million that people have, but I think it's a responsibility for everybody who is an educator, who's passionate about math education, to do these things despite how uncomfortable it can be. And I think that's how we would spread the word.
Thank you.
I
Go ahead,
love
Paul.
the fact that Laurent could just open up Maple Learn and show this and demonstrate, exactly why this happens and some counterexamples. If he just added a paragraph to that document and press share, that could immediately go into any social media platform. So just a plug for Maple Learn.
Nice. And I see a plug for Maple Primes in the chat as well as a vehicle for this. So there's another good thing. So thank you very much for all of those things.
Hey, Rob, while you're
Yeah,
at it, do you want to do a plug for Maple Transactions while we're talking about primes and everything else?
Why not? So Maple Transactions is a new journal sponsored by Maplesoft and by Scholarship Western, which is a consortium of libraries in Ontario, and that's the Western Library part of it. And so it's open access, so everybody can read it, and there are no page charges for authors. So it's not you don't have to pay to publish in it. We're interested in computer-assisted research in mathematics, applications, and education, especially education. So if you have a topic that you feel passionate about, you think, okay, I want Maple or computer algebra more generally to address this question in a teaching context, we'd love to hear from you. So mapletransactions.org. I suppose I should put that in the chat, but the chat is blowing up. But I will put it in the chat later. So mapletransactions.org, and there are some lovely papers up there now. The July issue had a very nice discussion of educational issues, a paper by Veso and Miroslav Lovrik and Adriana Burisin. And it's fun. Come and play with Maple Transactions. Thank you for the opportunity, Paulina, to remind you to do that. Okay, next question. So we have a comment from Michael Monaghan about trying to make plots smart. Tried taking limits at one point, but it became useless because of taking limits took a long time. This was exactly Laurent's point. There's also the honest plotting, using interval arithmetic to guarantee that the plots are correct, but then you get things blowing up. That's an interesting option, and it might be explored. Let's see. Oh, where are we?
I can add that we are looking into that. So we might see something like that in the next version of Maple. Who knows?
Who knows? This is a
Is
teaser.
that for my benefit?
And this is all about using interval arithmetic for plotting, which actually both Learn and Calculator do, and which Maple might in the future.
Oh, very good.
But it's tricky, because if you plot only based on interval arithmetic, you get some very conservative plots. Like if you do sine x over x, for example, you don't get the plot that you expect to get, even though it's technically correct. And so we are using a hybrid approach that combines interval arithmetic with other techniques to. But nothing is foolproof. I think whatever we do, right, it will never be foolproof.
Well, that's we can wish, but I think it would be a miracle. Okay, so we've had one teaser of what might come in the next version. Are any other teasers allowed to be given out here? It's another question for Laurent, I think.
Yeah, I mean, we can put some teasers out there. Anybody wants to go? Paul.
Okay, I will. I'll start. One of the things that I'm very excited about is some of the improvements I've seen in the chat to Plot Builder, as well as I'm very excited about it. That's the teaser. It'll be okay. Erik approves. It will. I think it'll make plotting in Maple a lot easier, and it will give people more flexibility to do that. So this is my plug for everybody who's interested. Please join our beta program. We're always wanting people to try out features, to give us new feedback. You can get in touch with us. I think it's beta@maplesoft.com, or email us at info@maplesoft.com. I'll put it in the chat. But that is something that I am particularly interested in.
Excellent.
I'll give one since I got cut off, but we've been working on all these steps algorithms, and another one that we want to cover is simplification, which is a big one. But one subtopic there is trig expressions with trig functions, and applying trig identities to just the right trig identities to get to a simpler function, simpler expression. And so you might possibly see something coming with that regard soon.
And Paul, you mean having, in the sense of a step-by-step solution that shows how it's done, as opposed to just giving you the simplified answer, right?
That's right. Yeah. So all of the identities you need to apply along the way to getting that simplified answer. Yeah.
Hard problem. Very hard problem. One question that came up in the chat is proof assistance. Is there any plan to develop or connect to proof assistance like Lean? Jürgen, any comment?
I figured you would ask me.
Well,
there's no short-term future plans, but we have been collaborating with various people at various universities to get some of the underlying technology that you would need for such proof of systems into Maple itself. So currently we're, so that's also a plug for something that might be in the next version of Maple, is a package for quantifier elimination over the rails.
okay. We have a question about interface to HTML5, which I don't understand. Is moving the interface to HTML5 on the roadmap of Maple? Any comments about that?
So our online version of Maple that's this well in the browser is Maple. So if you want to have Maple's power and you want to use it within a browser on the web, Maple Learn is the thing to do.
Yeah, well, on that note, and while we're also talking about teasers, you know, there are all these new scripting tools that have improved a lot between 2021 and the new version that'll come out. Paul, did you want to say anything about that?
There's a talk tomorrow about that topic, so maybe don't miss that one. Yeah, there's a lot of overlap between Maple Learn and Maple, and having both actually is beneficial. So you can get lots of power out of Maple Learn, even if it's not on the surface apparent. You can access any of the Maple algorithms.
Okay, we're down to the last 5 minutes of the panel. And so I'd like just to survey the panelists to see if they have any final remarks on their own, things that maybe have been sparked or recommendations for the future. So I'll start with Andrew because I ended with him last time. Do you have any further comments for everybody?
I don't think I've got any more comments right now, but I do want to thank everybody for all the great questions. I think we're all going to go away and do a lot of thinking after this. So thank you for that. But other than that, no, I'm glad we had such a great turnout, and thanks again to everyone.
Okay. Jürgen, any final remarks from you?
I can only echo what Andrew said. So thanks everybody for participating and for asking all these questions. This is very, very useful feedback for us.
Okay, Erik?
Yeah, I don't know if this is the same or the opposite, but I have too many things to say. I can't choose. So yeah.
We look forward to your article in Maple Transactions to discuss them. Okay, Paul?
Yeah, the conversation's not over. There's lots of opportunities to connect during the conference and after. I'll definitely be dropping in and out of the lounges before the first conference sessions every day and in between. So I'm glad to continue this anytime.
Thank you, Paul. Karishma?
Yeah, I think I just want to follow up from what Paul said. I think, as I mentioned earlier, it's really the feedback that we get from users that help us create products which ultimately benefit users. And these conversations are invaluable. I appreciate both, I love it when people love what we've created. I also appreciate the negative feedback. All of us here have thick skin. We can handle it. So I think, communicate with us. You have our contact information. There's Maple Primes. I really encourage the dialogue, not just at the conference, but throughout. So, and thank you for all of those who continue to let us know what you want and what we need to improve.
Thank you, Karishma. Paulina?
Yeah, I'm going to repeat what most people said, that it's great that you're giving us feedback. And I say this not as a panelist, but in my other role as co-chair of the conference with Rob, that, the special thing about this conference is it brings us all together, Maple developers as well as Maple users. And, we have a really great exchange of ideas that way. Thank you.
Thank you, Paulina. Okay, I leave the last word to Laurent. You are muted.
Everything's been said, I feel, but yeah, I mean, we are pretty excited about where we are with our products, and even more excited with what's to come. And ultimately, we are building this stuff for you, and definitely appreciate the feedback and need the feedback. So again, right? Don't hesitate. Contact us. We are here to listen, because again, back to our mission. We believe that math matters, and we want to build the tools that are needed to further that cause.
Thank you very much, Laurent. And thanks to all of the panel, and thanks to all of the participants for coming. And I hope you enjoy the rest of the conference. We'll see you in the networking lounges. Cheerio.
Thanks, Rob.
Thank you, Rob. Thanks, everyone.
Thank you,
Thanks,
everyone.
Bye.